Now I'm all done with the quarterbacks. If you want to know what I think about the quarterbacks for this 2014 NFL draft class, you can look down below in the description box. I've got my scouting report series there, and I've also got my quarterback big board rankings there as well. Now I move on to the wide receivers, and I'll start off with the wide receiver that is perceived relatively unanimously as the number one wide receiver on the board in this 2014 NFL draft, and perhaps the safest pick of this entire draft out of any position, and that is Sammy Watkins, the wide receiver from Clemson. Now, when I watched the tape on this guy, there was a lot to like. A lot of things really stood out to me. Obviously, his initial burst. He's a very explosive player. His short area quickness, his ability to get separation really stood out to me. Obviously, his vertical speed, his versatility of being able to line up both outside and inside. In today's NFL, where you want players that can make plays in space and you want them to be able to line up all over the field and be threats both in the short and intermediate, but also in the vertical passing game, Sammy Watkins definitely fits that profile. He's also somebody that can make a lot of plays after he catches the ball. He has a great run after the catch ability, and in general is just a very, very explosive athlete. And you just can't coach that type of speed. And you saw that play out in this 2013 season at Clemson. I mean, he made all types of big, spectacular plays and lots of explosive plays where he was able to demonstrate his ability to run after the catch. He was able to demonstrate his ability to stretch defenses vertically over the top. And then he demonstrated his ability to hit the home run, so to speak, make the big time play, the 60, 70, 80-yard touchdown catch. When you look at this guy and you sit there and you see the guys like the Percy Harvins and the Randall Cobbs and the T.Y. Hiltons and the Tavon Austins of the worlds and those type of performers and those type of wide receivers, those guys that can line up outside, that can line up in the slot, they can do all different types of things, but their calling cards, their hallmarks are their initial burst, their quickness, their speed, their run after the catch ability, and their home run hitting ability. Sammy Watkins definitely fits that mold. And the good thing for him is that while he doesn't have the prototype size of, let's say, 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, at just a shade under 6'1" and probably about 210, 215 pounds, he has more than enough size, I feel, to hold up to the rigors of a 16-game NFL season more ably than maybe somebody like a Percy Harvin, a Deshaun Jackson, a Tavon Austin, a T.Y. Hilton, a Randall Cobb. So you would think on the surface that he'll be able to hold up and last. And like I said, there are a lot of things to like about his game. And I see why there's so much positive buzz about him and everybody viewing him as a top 5 pick and talking about him of perhaps being one of the 3 unanimous safe picks in this entire draft above all else, maybe along with Greg Robinson and Khalil Mack from Buffalo. And I get why some people would argue that he maybe should be drafted as high as number 2 overall by the St. Louis Rams. Now, with all of his positives, there are some question marks I have about him. In the system that they ran at Clemson, you didn't see a lot of intricate routes run by Sammy Watkins. He didn't necessarily need to because his athleticism, his speed, his explosiveness were so overwhelming that he didn't need to be sophisticated in the route tree that he ran. But at the NFL level, he's going to have to work on his route running ability. That doesn't necessarily indicate to me that I believe he's not a good route runner. There were times where he demonstrated some very good route running ability, but I cannot lie and sit there and say that it isn't a question about him heading into the NFL level. I also question his hands, and the reason I question his hands is because a lot of the catches that he made at Clemson were the simple type of catches, where they were on quick screens and they were on slants and quick outs and quick hook patterns. You know, you don't have to have great hands to make those type of catches. Yes, he made a lot of those type of catches, but I wonder if he's going to be able to make the tough catches. At moments at Clemson, he demonstrated the ability to make those tough catches, but it wasn't something you saw consistently enough. Is he going to have the type of hands that you need to be able to trust somebody like a Sammy Watkins to be a number 1 wide receiver at the National Football League level? Now, he has some questions, about his durability. He's had some injury history in the past. You know, it's one of those things. If he was maybe 5'10" and 185 pounds, I would be a little bit more concerned about it. He has had some injury troubles in the past, so it does concern me just a little bit. But I'm not sure how concerned I am about it, and I'm not sure it would stop me from taking a Sammy Watkins in the top 5 necessarily. When I look at Sammy Watkins and the way he projects at the NFL level, I look at him and I see my NFL comparison to him being a smaller version, but maybe a better version of a Cordero Patterson. Somebody that's a home run threat. Somebody that can sit there and make big time plays, even if he only had limited touches of the football. And you saw that with Cordero Patterson his rookie year in Minnesota. This is somebody that I had rated all throughout the process heading into the 2013 draft as one of my 10 best players on the board. And the reason being is he had size, he had speed, and he had explosive big play abilities, both as a receiver and as a weapon and as a return specialist. Now, Watkins has some return ability, but he's not quite of the class of, let's say, of Cordero Patterson. But I do envision Sammy Watkins being able to come into the league as a rookie and put up close to 1,000 receiving yards and really show his stuff and make some big time explosive plays like a Cordero Patterson did when he was actually given the opportunities to by the Minnesota Vikings in 2013. In terms of Sammy Watkins, to me, he's a top 5 talent on my board. There's no question about that. I do have him ranked a little bit ahead as the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class. I don't think the margin between number 1 and number 2 and number 3, 4, 5 is as great as maybe some of the draft experts and talking heads are going to try and tell you, because this is a really talented, deep, and loaded class of wide receivers. Not just at the top, not just the round 1, round 2 talents, but all throughout. You're going to find NFL receivers all throughout this draft, and probably even some undrafted free agents. That's how good this draft class is for wide receivers in 2014. If I'm a team like the St. Louis Rams, I have to consider taking a Sammy Watkins number 2 overall. If I'm a team like, let's say, the Cleveland Browns at number 4, I have to entertain the thought of taking a Sammy Watkins number 4 overall. The Oakland Raiders, if he's there, you have to strongly consider taking him at number 5 overall. If you're a team like the Detroit Lions, I would completely advocate, even with the signing of Golden Tate, because of what a Sammy Watkins could bring to the table and the fact that you've brought in an offensive-minded head coach, you're playing the same division as the Green Bay Packers, and you have Matthew Stafford there, and you have Calvin Johnson there. I would totally advocate the Detroit Lions mortgaging a good portion of their draft to move up, let's say, to number 4 overall to get a Sammy Watkins, because I feel like he will be worth it at the end of the day. In 10 years from now, people will be looking back at, Sammy Watkins was one of the best players in this draft, and he will totally justify the price that a Detroit Lions team would have to pay to move up 6 slots in the draft in order to get him, and that price won't be as great as it maybe was in years past. So I think there's no reason for the Detroit Lions to not do it, especially if they can find a team like the Jaguars, the Raiders, or the Browns that are willing to move down to number 10, and the Lions can move up into that top 5 to take him. Watkins will be a difference maker in the NFL. I have no question about it. The question is ultimately, will he end up being the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class? That's easier said than done, just because of the fact of this is such a deep and talented class. It'll depend on where he goes, depends on how he's utilized, depends on the scheme fit. But I think Watkins has all the tools to be a big-time Pro Bowl wide receiver talent in the National Football League.